Thank you for joining me and welcome to another Backyard Beekeeping interview. I'm Frederick Dunn and my special guest is Randy McCaffrey, but you may know him by his YouTube channel name, 628 Dirt Rooster. Randy has performed more than 800 honeybee removals from structures through the years. We get started by asking Randy to introduce himself.
My name is Randy McCaffrey. I'm known as Rooster, Dirt Rooster, the ignorant guy that's down the street. I don't know. I'm in Gulfport, Mississippi. I'm a insurance claims adjuster and contractor by trade. I do a lot of bee removals and a lot of swarm catches, and I keep bees, I sell bees, and I do YouTube, and that's what I do amongst quite a few other things, but that's the main.
That's okay. That's great. I'm gonna lead you along.
Okay.
And I'm really glad you're here. Thank you for agreeing to talk to me, even though we've met in person. We went out to dinner. We met at the Hive Life conference, and we hung out for a while, which, by the way, was a really good time. And I still have my
Annette. I got the matching one.
Yeah, Annette says hello and wanted to make sure that this is the mug I was using. So
hey, Annette.
There we go. So as you've already said, you go by 628 Dirt Rooster on YouTube. I do have a question about that right off the bat. Maybe people would want to know where you came up with that name for your YouTube channel.
That is all about dirt biking. My dirt bike is a XR 600 with a 628 kit. I still have it. I don't ride it anymore. It needs rebuilding, and it's a dirt bike. That's where the dirt comes from. And when you're dirt biking, you're slinging rooster tails, and that's where that came from. So when I was making a YouTube channel name, I think now you can use the same name as anybody else, but back then they wouldn't let you. You had to keep typing and everything. Every time you thought you had something clever that there's no way anybody else had, and you're like, oh yeah, and you type it in, it's taken.
Yeah, so that's cool.
Even 600 Dirt Rooster was taken. So 628 Dirt Rooster was available, and I thought, well, unless you're desert racing between 97 and 98, you won't know what it is, but that's what it is. So I had intended to do a dirt biking channel to begin with. It had nothing to do with bees when I started.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Well, we're glad you shifted over to bees because that's why you're here right now. Yeah. And I did notice another thing. It says 628 Dirt Rooster, but you've added bees, or did it always have bees on it? Later, did you change it to add bees so they would know it's a bee channel?
I added bees last year because something changed in the algorithm, and my channel went from a real sharp growth to nothing. I mean, it flatlined overnight, and I thought, well, shoot, they must have changed something in the algorithm. And I looked at other bee channels, and they were still growing, and it flatlined for a good while. So I added bees on the end of the name just so Google would know what the channel was about.
That's interesting.
Not that they wouldn't from the rest of the content on it, but that didn't change it. That didn't change anything. And then it flatlined again here recently. So we're
recently. Define what flatline is. What's that look like? I mean, does it go to like no views or no subs, or what's going on?
It went from 1,500, about 15 to 1,600 new subs a month to 0 for 4 or 5 months, three or 4 months, I'll say.
0 for 3 or 4 months?
Overnight from 1,500 a month to 0.
Now,
complete flatline. And I contact YouTube, and they said, oh, everything's working right with your channel. And I said, no, it's not.
That is not a good feeling, because that certainly hurts your algorithm.
Yeah.
And that's something unexpected. I think I'd panic if things flatlined. And because you've got a really strong YouTube. What's your subscriber base right now?
19.5.
How many subscribers do you have?
119.5.
119. So you've got your silver play button.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they'll do that investigation.
I wish I could do like you do and just reach and grab stuff, but it's over there in the box. I'm gonna leave it where it's at.
For those that don't know, a silver play button gets awarded to a YouTube channel that has over 100,000 subscribers, but it's not automatic. That's why sometimes you'll see a channel that's got a lot of subs on it, and they don't get the play button because they do this investigation to make sure that all the subscribers are legitimate and everything else. but yours is good. You pass those wickets and you got your silver play button. So you're right up there with Mr. Ed then, because he's got his.
Yeah, he got his. Yappy's got his. And
Yeah, I remember when he did that unboxing with his mother.
yeah.
You see that video with Mr. Ed?
Yeah,
And
I
she's
did.
like, well, what's this? He's all excited. He wanted her to be really impressed by it. She, oh, well, that's nice. And she handed it off. Okay, but we're here to talk about bees. And one of the reasons I really wanted to talk to you, and I don't want to retread anything that we talked to Mr. Ed about.
Okay.
So those of you who don't know, there's another interview with Jeff Horchow. And we talked about the rip outs and everything else. But Randy, you and Mr. Ed work together a lot, but I know there's a lot of discussion and competition about who gets the first swarm of the year and who does the first rip out. Mr. Ed, by the way, we just saw him lose his cookies when he thought he didn't catch the queen.
that was hilarious because I've never seen you get upset like that before.
Yeah, his whole body just went, something happened to him right there. I never saw anything like it. So, and it's interesting too that you're involved with insurance. So, and you said you're a contractor. What kind of contractor?
Residential remodels usually.
Okay, so you're active. You're doing like how many remodels are you doing a year?
I don't do any anymore. It's with the cutouts.
Okay.
I'll do repairs and stuff related to the cutouts, but
okay,
we stopped that back in whenever the Deepwater Horizon spill was. I can't remember what year that was, but when the economy was already turning down, I'd already let some of my guys go, and then the Deepwater Horizon spill happened, and the economy around here just dried up. We're right here on the coast, and it affected everything around here. So that's when I shut that down and went back to claims work. And
wow.
yeah.
So that means because you're a contractor, when you do these rip outs, you're fully capable of doing the repair after the bees have been removed.
Yeah.
And so is that part of what you're offering to people when you accept a job to remove bees from their house?
During slow times of the year, I'll offer it. When we're going full bore during the season, I don't want to do, I'll put back drywall or something to cover a hole, but I don't want to be finishing sheetrock and painting and doing trim work and all that kind of stuff. I'll leave that to their contractor, whoever they can get. Sometimes it's the homeowner wants to do it.
Okay, so those limitations have nothing to do with your skill set. In other words, you don't do a bad job mudding up drywall and taping joints and stuff.
No, I'm
your
not.
Your work is really good.
I'm not the fastest guy in the world at it, but when I'm done, it's right.
Okay, because Annette forbid me from doing any more drywall finishing. I don't know what her complaints are. I did okay. Anyway, so give me ballpark lifetime. How many removals from structures have you done?
Lifetime removals from structures would be in the neighborhood of 800 to 900.
Wow.
And I keep a log every year for about the first month and a half, and then I lose interest in it. So I know about how many I do per year. I know roughly how many I do per year. So I'm just calculating how many years I've been doing it and about how many I do a year. So,
So that's a good segue. How many years have you been doing it? Talk about your very first structural removal of honeybees.
I've been doing it for 12 years, and my very first structural removal was with my brother, who got me into beekeeping. He had a cutout to do in a old building, really unique warehouse up in Laurel, Mississippi. It had this big freight elevator in it, a hand crank system, giant pulleys, 6 foot tall pulleys, hand crank freight elevator. But it was just it was a 160-year-old building or something like that. It had bees up in a top wall between the outside wall of that one and the outside wall of a building next to it that had burned, but the exterior wall remained standing. But there was about that much space between the two. Somehow the bees had gotten up in there.
Now, were you already a beekeeper at that point, or was that your first exposure?
I was not a beekeeper at that point. That was my first exposure, and he had to talk me into it. I didn't want anything to do with it. I was offering him tools, and he said, "I don't need your tools. I need your brain. I need to figure out how to get to these bees." And I said, "I don't, so I don't want anything to do with bees. You can come get tools, whatever you need." Yeah. He said, "No, I need you." And so he taught, and that's the first exposure my dad got. So we both got into beekeeping that way, and mine was more getting into cutouts than beekeeping. I wasn't really interested in the beekeeping. I was interested in figuring out how to get bees out, and it was a challenge, and it was fun, and a little bit of an adrenaline rush sometimes.
Yeah.
So that was my first toe dip into the beekeeping world.
So what went through your head when you finally uncovered the bees that were living in that structure? When you finally saw all the bees, what were you thinking about?
I really didn't know what to expect going into it. And when we finally got to them, we barely could reach them. We could reach up and touch the bottom of comb. Was about all we could do without renting a man lift and then doing some more demo from the outside. That was all we were going to get. So we didn't even get that hive out. But
oh, you didn't get it.
We were unable to do that removal. And so when we got to them and we were able to touch comb and just see how the bees reacted, and I didn't have a suit or anything, so I'm just, taking chances, didn't know what was going to happen. And I thought, man, that was pretty neat. And I was a little bit of an adrenaline junkie, and a friend of ours who was president of a hunting club that we were members of called me and said, we got this old building up here, this old house has got bees in it. We're going to tear it down. And I said, well, let me have them. He said, okay. He said, I heard you were playing with bees. I said, yeah. So I'll come get them. And so I went up there late one evening with I think I must have had a bee vac. I'm trying to recall now, but it was just it was a real unique old farmhouse, and the bees were behind a chimney. And I know I had a generator. I can't remember if it was for lights or for a bee vac, but I want to say I must have had a bee vac. I don't know how else I would have done it. But
now, when you mentioned putting up lights, do you put any kind of gel filters over those lights to make them red or cut them down so the bees don't fly to them?
No, I don't. These days I use light to control where they go, or lack of light to control where they go. I want them to go to a window or somewhere where they're easy to gather. Because once you open a structure, especially, we do a lot of removals from the inside. I don't like to open the outside because the weather could change before it gets repaired or whatever, and then somebody might try to hold you liable for any water damage done, which would be legit. But I do siding repair is more expensive than sheetrock repair. And it's takes longer sometimes. So if I can't put siding right back when I'm done, I'll take them from the inside. And so I want open windows. I want the light to draw the bees where I want them to go instead of into the house somewhere. So if somebody comes in and starts flipping lights on in the hallways or whatever, I'll go tell them, hey, you got to leave those lights off or you're gonna have a mess in here. So
yeah. And that's really good that you point that out, because I'm sure a lot of beekeepers have been in their garage when they do honey extraction and things like that, and the bees are just all over the windows. Yeah. So if you're in the house and you kill all the lights and the only light source is a window, then they're going to collect on that. And then you're saying you vacuum them off of the window. Is that what you do?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So that's really interesting.
I try to get them pretty early. They'll collect on the window by the thousands if you leave them long enough, but they get stressed just like they do anywhere else. Just like a fly, they'll bump on the windows until they can't fly anymore and they'll lay down. So I try to collect them fast enough that they're not doing that. And they also defecate on the windows and leave yellow streaks everywhere. So you got to, the faster you can collect them, the less mess and the less loss of bees you have as well.
Now, so as an insurance guy, I'll bet you have a big disclaimer that the homeowner has to sign.
I don't have any, everything is, everything's on a handshake.
Yeah. Is that right?
Absolutely.
So, but you must work it out. So then verbally, you just work it out. If the bees make a mess, who's cleaning that up?
No, we cover everything up with painter's tarps and things like that. We keep it clean. We cover the floors, we cover the walls.
Yeah. So you're using the plastic drop cloths and things for the floors and stuff?
I use those 2 mil plastics for the walls, and I use something a little thicker, a little more substantial for the floors. Depends on what kind of surface we're working on. If you use just plastic on the floor, sometimes it gets slippery.
Yeah.
So I use those paper lined or plastic lined paper drop cloths.
Okay.
So the honey doesn't run through them, but they're not as slick.
Yeah. So now when you say use a vacuum, describe your toolkit. So you're loading up your truck, or maybe you have a van or a truck that's already loaded and ready to go for extractions, or do you put everything together and then go do the job? What's your tool list look like?
My truck is always jam-packed with all kinds of stuff. And so every job's different. So some jobs maybe I need a Sawzall on one job and might not need it again for months. So sometimes I'll keep tools here that I won't know if I need them till I get to the job and start digging into it. But almost always in my truck, there's 1 or 2 ladders, a couple of work platforms, oscillating saw, and a T-square level, something to mark off where I'm going to be cutting.
Now, what about your thermal equipment? How do you find where they are on the wall?
I use the FLIR one for iPhone. Plugs into the bottom of my phone.
Okay.
Keep it in my console. I don't trust the battery on it, so every time I'm on my way to a job, I plug it in.
Yeah.
That saves a whole lot of time cutting and digging and trying to figure out where bees are.
Yeah, I think one of the first videos I ever saw of yours, you were outside. I think you had just gotten that and were using it to look at a soffit area or something on the outside of a house, and you could find the bees with it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, it was a big cost savings for me. It was, it's $350 tool, but it pays for itself very quickly, and the amount of time that it saves you in trying to locate bees. But you got to know how to use it too, because it's especially if you've got bees coming in on a east, west, or southern exposure of a home and the sun's on it, that FLIR picks up heat differentiation between the colony and the wall temperature or whatever. If the sun gets on that wall, everything's the same. You're not going to find anything.
Yeah, because it only reads surface temperatures. So if that wall's in the sun and it goes over 97 degrees, you got nothing to look at.
You got nothing.
Right.
So
yeah, I use the C2 and they've discontinued it, which is really annoying.
Yeah.
So, but it's really good. Anyway, so it's interesting that you said you really weren't interested in bees. So that was kind of backwards. Usually people call a beekeeper and then they know somebody and they go and they do the rip out, but you were into the rip out before you started keeping bees. So what was the turning point that made you decide to bring bees home and set up an apiary on your own property?
I set them up right away. The first cutout I did by myself was on that hunting camp, and I took those home and set them up in some equipment that, I racking my brain. I don't even remember where I got the equipment. I guess my brother must have gave it to me. But I brought those home. It was a huge hive. He had kind of guided me through framing up comb, things like that. So I made 2 colonies out of it. I didn't know where the queen was or how to find her, but I was able to get enough brood in the boxes on site, and I was there long enough that I was able to get bees on the brood and keep them there. It was after dark through most of the job, and they ended up making a queen or something, I guess, because I ended up with two colonies and they stayed for a long time. But
so back then when you're starting out, you probably didn't know to make sure that both hives had eggs and things so they could make a queen, right? Was it just pure luck?
I knew they had to have brood. I didn't know what I didn't even know it was called brood. I just knew they had to have their frames of stuff.
Open brood. Yeah.
I didn't know what all that was called.
A lot of people do, even now when they're just starting out, they think they got frames of brood, open brood, they see the larvae on there and they think, oh, it's good, we can do a split, they'll make their own queen. But it really has to be an egg or a recently hatched egg. And so for those that are watching, so they understand kind of what goes on there.
I knew enough about animal husbandry to know that they didn't just form a queen out of thin air, and that they wouldn't make her out of honey. So all this stuff that I was finding that wasn't honey had to come, as much of that as I could save had to come with me. So I actually went home with 2 boxes completely separate. I don't know, I'm sure I got the queen in one of them. There's no doubt, because I didn't leave much there, but it was a long job and I got really stung up and my body wasn't used to it. So I was really, I look bad. I look like somebody beat me with a sack of quarters.
Oh, it's a sack of quarters. Is that what they beat people with down there?
That or oranges.
Oranges. All right. I don't know. Neither one of those sound good, but okay. So it's interesting. So you took them home and you started beekeeping. Where would you say you learned about beekeeping overall? Like, what was your most valuable source? Direct experience, or did you actually end up taking a course somewhere or joining a group? What happened?
A little bit of it, a little bit of all of that. My brother had met Mr. Roy Klingon, who lives close to him. He ended up being our mentor for a long time. He's I think he's 82 years old now. He'd been in beekeeping for a long time, and he ran 90 to 100 colonies every year. And so he was my brother's go-to and mine when I was up there. But usually I would call my brother and say, hey, ask Mr. Roy whatever. And pretty shortly after getting into beekeeping, my brother met Darren Strauss, who runs what now is Wonderful Bees. They run about 17,000 colonies up there, and we started hanging out with them a lot.
Holy cow, 17,000 colonies?
Yeah. So we started hanging out with them a lot. So from the get-go, all I hung out with in the beekeeping world was commercial or large sideline beekeepers.
Mm-hmm.
But even that, I still wasn't really interested in actual beekeeping. I was keeping bees and a couple years in being pretty successful with it because I'd see what they would do and I would kind of mock or mimic what they were doing. Mm-hmm. But beekeeping in itself, I didn't really get interested until I started posting YouTube videos and people started asking me questions, and it'd make me dig to try to figure out what the answer was to reply to them.
Yeah, if you want to learn a topic, teach that topic, because they're certainly going to lead you down and you're going to find every little bit of it that you weren't aware of. Yeah. Let me ask, did you have home support for the bees? Was your wife excited that you were going to do that?
She didn't care. She wasn't.
Either way.
Yeah, she wasn't interested. We had enough property that I had them over out of the way where they weren't bothering anybody. And I don't know. I don't really know if she thought it was neat or what, but she just, do what you're going to do. That's the way it's always been.
She just green lights anything you come up with. She just says, you go, Randy, you do whatever you want.
Pretty much.
And
it works the other way too. If she calls me and says, hey, I found this rabbit or these chickens I like or whatever, go ahead. I don't care.
So the concession is she gets to keep chickens and rabbits.
She's got a rabbit and about 26 chickens, I think.
Now, are those the chickens? Did you get some new chickens last year that you put a video up on?
Yeah, we're getting new chickens all the time. We have 4 little chicks out there now that she just got the other day. We have 4 silkies that she got a month or 2 ago. She's always getting chickens and then selling the ones that she don't like and keeping the pretty ones.
And for people that don't know, silky chickens are chickens that have a gene that makes their feathers not grow right, and it looks like fur. And way back in the day, they used to sell those as half cats, half chickens before people were onto them, because they really have, their feathers just are fuzzy.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. Where is she sourcing her birds from?
Just various people on Facebook here.
Oh, just groups.
And she's gotten some eggs from some reputable growers, and we've incubated quite a few of them, but mostly just here local. So she's got one naked neck. I don't know if you've seen those naked neck silkies. It looks like somebody just picked the neck and just went. And
yeah, if somebody wants to look them up, they're Churkins, and the naked neck is a breed, by the way. It's in the American Poultry Association standard of perfection, and they're ugly. It looks like the chickens just picked the feathers off of them.
Yeah.
But
yeah. And it's called a showgirl, of all things.
That figures. Well, it goes to show that everybody's got their own likes,
Yeah.
But so we covered your first structural removal, but when you were looking at the commercial beekeeping, did you see any practices there that actually you didn't like? I mean, what was it about what you saw or experienced there that you picked and chose the things that you wanted to apply to your own beekeeping, but did you see something that you just thought, oh man, I could never do that?
It wasn't really anything that I didn't like, and I was intrigued by it because it was I have sort of an entrepreneurial spirit. I've delved into a lot of things. I've owned quite a few businesses, and I was interested in it, but I also knew the cost and the time it took to get something like that off the ground. Mm-hmm. But some of the things that some of the things that they observe in commercial beekeeping is not what we observe full and feral colonies. So when I would ask a question about something and they would give me their answer, I would be confused, like, that's not the way bees do. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't even know how. You've been in bees for 25 years. How have you not figured this out?
It is actually pretty funny because they're so utilitarian about what they're doing. They've got a system and it works, and they're not branching out because they just don't have the time, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
They don't
commercial
have the time.
beekeeping
They
on
don't.
that scale.
They don't have the time. They don't. Most of them, there are always exceptions, but most of them have been in commercial beekeeping from the beginning, and they have never observed what feral bees do or how the nature of an actual bee, which that's all I saw because I would do so many cutouts every year. And so when I would ask questions about why are you stacking your honey supers on top like that, and they would tell me, well, bees like to build up. And I'm I'm going, what? Bees like to build up. Hey, I had to do some thinking to figure out that it's not a matter of what bees like, it's what is easily manageable for the beekeeper. Has nothing to do with what the bees like usually on a commercial level.
Yeah.
It's what you can do, what you can handle, what your equipment can do, and what's most feasible for the job. But yeah, that was and that was Joel. I think he's from Honduras. Joel said the bees build up, and and I thought, well, maybe it's just a language barrier thing. And then I asked another guy that had, he's from America. He spoke plain English. He said, yeah, the bees like to build up. And I said, no, the bees like to build down. They work up, but they like to build down.
Yeah, they start at the top, and they're like stalagmites, kind of.
Yeah, so it took me a little while to figure out. That's just it's just a management style, management choice. It's not anything to do with what the bees are like. It's what you can make them do by manipulating them. Because in beekeeping, it's all about manipulation. You're making the bees do what you want them to do within reason. Some things they're going to do what they're going to do, but overall, if you're trying to raise bees, you're trying to make honey, whatever you're trying to do, you've got to do certain things, have certain strategies to make them do what you need them to do.
Can you give me some idea of something that you noticed during a rip out that you started to see consistently that was like a big eye opener? Like, wow, bees are really not what I was told, just like with the commercial people. What is something that you observed doing these rip outs that was just like an amazing epiphany? Like you just became aware of this is what bees do, and it really kind of blew your mind a little bit.
I don't know if I've had any major epiphanies on anything like that. It doesn't take long to figure out where bees will not go or will not build. So when somebody calls you and says, I've got bees in my attic, and you can pretty quickly let them know that they won't be there long. Or is your house spray foam insulated, or is there a giant tree shading that part of the house or something? Because if they're in the attic and the sun's getting on it at all, once it gets past mid-90s, they're out.
Yeah. Or you would know that they might be talking about another species, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so, even yellow jackets, if it's that hot, they can't handle that temperature either.
Yeah. So give me an example of when you got a call from somebody and they thought they had honeybees. I'm sure now you know how to vet it out and make sure that they're talking about honeybees. But can you give me an example when you showed up thinking it was going to be honeybees and it was something else and it was more than you wanted to cope with?
There's been quite a few times where I've shown up and it was yellow jackets. And I generally won't fool with them unless I think it'll make a funny video or an interesting video. If it's just a yellow jacket nest, it's just going to be dust them and walk away. I'm not a licensed pest control guy. I don't carry chemicals in my truck. If I can cut them out and I can make an interesting video out of it, I'll do it. I want to enjoy it because I'm going to get stung. And those down here, pretty much all we have is southern yellow jackets. And in that regard, we don't have. I figured out when I went to do a yellow jacket cutout with Yappy last year, eastern yellow jackets are puppies compared to southern yellow jackets. They have a very mild sting with their venom, and their temperament is similar to that of a honeybee. They're not aggressive at all, really. They'll get you, but it's not bad. But southern yellow jackets will attack in numbers, and their venom hurts for hours. I mean, 5-6 hours later, you're still feeling it pretty good. And the swelling and the redness, the itching lasts a while, days.
Yeah.
So if I come across southern yellow jackets, I'll usually tape up if it's something I want to do. Otherwise, I just tell them, hey, call your pest control guy, because a lot of people have contracts down here and the pest control company has been by and told them it's honeybees. I show up in his yellow jackets and they're going, well, my pest guy said it's honeybees. And I'm like, he doesn't know what he's talking about, but he can kill them for you and not.
Yeah, because people get bonded down there for termites and stuff, and they have fire ant treatments. And is that right?
That's right.
So like as soon as you buy a house down there, you kind of want to get one of those contracts or make sure it's been bonded for so many years ahead of time so it's not infested.
Yeah, you have to have a termite inspection on every sale. You have to have, just like anything else, but you have to have a termite inspection on every sale down here. And the termite problem down here in our coastal area down into the Florida Panhandle, the termite problem is so bad down here. Terminix actually rewrote their contract for the southern parts of Mississippi, Alabama, and northern part of Florida, I believe, because of the Formosan termite problems.
Mm-hmm.
And so I used to handle Terminix is self-insured, and I used to handle their large loss claims for them. And is really not uncommon to run across a termite damage claim that ran into $100,000-$200,000.
Wow.
They're just they're a beast to deal with. And if you sell a contract on a home and it already had termite damage, and then you find more termite damage after your contract is in force, you own that damage. So maybe it had $50,000 damage already, and you found a little hole in a windowsill. Well, now you own the rest of that damage. So they would have to negotiate payments on stuff like that and have contractors that knew what they were doing to fix that kind of stuff. And they wouldn't just go through and gut a house down to the studs looking for damage, because you can see where the damage stops.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
plus, don't they have like sniffers? They're like, it's almost methane sniffers or something. They can tell that the termites are alive and occupying wood.
If they do, I've never seen it.
Okay. So anyway, moving on.
I do know that the FLIR camera will pick up healthy termite infestation.
Oh yeah, because they generate heat too. Yeah. So you mentioned getting stung up sometimes, and you don't want to deal with the wasps or whatever. Does that mean you're not usually wearing protective equipment, or do you have full bee suits at the ready in your truck, or what do you bring with you for personal protection?
I don't own a full bee suit, but I always have a bee jacket in the truck, and I usually have a mosquito net hat. It's about all I wear usually. It's really hot and humid down here, and I'm a big boy and I sweat really easy, and I don't put on anything I don't have to. So I'll take a few stings over a heat stroke any day. So mostly if I'm suited up, it's usually just a mosquito net hat, but usually I'll go without anything because we're working in low light situations most of the time. We're not out in the broad daylight, and unless we're in our bees, working our own bees, but we're in somebody's house working up in a ceiling where there's no light, and we're trying to control the light. So we're working with a flashlight or something like that. And to be able to see what I'm doing and to be able to locate queens and whatever else I want to do, I don't wear much of anything. I need to be able to see, and I need to not stroke out on somebody's couch or something.
Yeah, so you got to stay hydrated too. So what is since you only have one bee jacket, can you describe the bee jacket that you chose?
Oh, I have several, but I don't have any of them in here. I've got 3 Guardian jackets with the fencing type veil, and I've got one Man Lake ventilated jacket with the fencing veil.
So what were your features that you were looking for on those jackets? Like, what made you decide on that one? The size, the fit, the features, what was going on with them?
I used to have the round veil, what do you call it? The
Buckfast style.
Yeah, I had one of those before. And if I do a cutout where I'm laid on my back and I lay down, it pushes the veil in my face.
Yeah.
So it was terrible to work with. And Guardian really mostly what I wanted was a vented suit. Yeah, there you go. Guardian Bee Apparel.
I mean, we're not trying to promote Guardian or anything, but this is their Pro Veil. So see the distance from the face? This gets nice and close. So what you're talking about there, I love the chance to give a shout out to Terry, because you also said you didn't want to be stroking out. And that was his whole reasoning behind why he came up with that zippered veil, which, by the way, now is being copied by a bunch of other bee suit manufacturers, but it was so that you could just zip the front of your suit and stay hydrated. And
also, little plug for Terry. He's got these hats on his site, and I have an absolutely enormous head, and his hats fit my head. So
that's good. So yeah, that's a good bee suit. I reviewed that suit years ago. It's extremely well made. So I'm actually glad that was your choice. And again, the zippered veil, people need to stay hydrated, especially when it's super hot and things like that. And one thing I wanted to know about too is you're interacting with homeowners and people that may not understand what's going to be involved in the rip out that you've done. Have there been any, if you're into photography, there's something called a bridezilla for a wedding photographer, someone that you just can't please no matter what. I've never had one of those, but I've heard about them. Have you actually been to a job that the homeowner was just not workable? Like did
No, I really never have. I've had a few that wanted to tell me how to do the job, but fairly early on I set them straight, and not in a rude way, just you want me to do the job, or it's going to cost you more to stand here and tell me how to do my job. Probably the worst one, and the guy was just trying to be helpful. He wasn't he wasn't out of line with anything, but it was his mother's house. He was trying to tell me how to get to the bees. They were in a soffit, and I was going to set up a ladder, and he didn't want me working off a ladder. He wanted to set up scaffold, and I said, don't set up scaffold, it'll be in the way, and I don't want to work off scaffold. So I scheduled the job. I get there and scaffold's already set up under where I have to work, and it was so low that I ended up having to crane my neck the whole time because the soffit was right here over my head where I had to get on the scaffold. It was just a miserable job. I wish I hadn't done it now. Mm-hmm. But he's probably the worst one. Everybody else especially if they've seen any of my videos, they kind of know I know what I'm doing. They get out of the way, or they just want to stand and watch, which I don't mind. I have people sit and watch all the time. They pull up a chair and say, hey, can I sit over here? And I'll be, yeah, you're fine. If anything gets on you, just don't swat it. Just let me know. Mm-hmm. And yeah, people are easy to deal with. I don't have any problems really. I've got, it's funny. I'm sitting here looking at my webcam. I just realized I'm on my laptop.
Oh, that your camera's the laptop camera instead of your webcam?
Yeah, I was wondering why I was such a
And that's why when you started, you were just showing your keyboard and stuff because you didn't realize. So you have a better quality camera. So what you're saying is you would be looking better if the right camera had kicked in.
I do have a much better quality camera, and I didn't realize it wasn't hooked up because I don't do a lot of these lives, Fred. I'm just, you contact me. I was like, heck yeah, anything for Fred Dunn.
You can you can switch cameras if you want to.
I don't know. Let me see if it'll do it without kicking off. I don't know. It may stick with what it's got since it's already in there. Let's see. I'm gonna stop video for a second.
Go ahead.
And you can still hear me, right?
Yeah.
Well.
Oh, there you go. So now, all right, we're going to start over completely.
that works for me.
Just kidding.
That's my light. Am I too bright?
No, I think that looks good. You got Rembrandt light going. 3/4 left.
I got a big ring light over there facing the wall. I don't.
Okay. I think it looks good. You're fine. And now the colors on your hat are better. Yeah.
We're going to have to redo the Guardian hat.
So what is this other camera that you have? Is it a Logitech or something?
Yeah, it's a Logitech.
StreamCam, Logicam, one of the little square ones or a rectangle one?
Rectangle.
All right.
It
Now
is
what are
a. I can't read it.
That's all right.
It was the most expensive one. It was the most expensive one that Best Buy had. So
Okay.
yeah, it's
So
gotta
you're a
be
Best
all
Buy
right.
shopper. All right. So give me an example of a house you showed up to do a rip out. Have you always gone through with it, or have you looked things over and decided this is just a little too much, more damage than we want to do? What do you do if you find a home that you're not really, your heart's not in it, it doesn't look like it's within your capability, if that's ever happened?
That it's never happened that it wasn't in my capability. It's happened where it wasn't feasible for the customer. Matter of fact, I just left one this week. Lady called me today and she's gonna have her pest control guy take care of it. It's big house on the beach, got bees inside the chimney, actually behind brick, up above a roof, up above the roof line. So it would have to come from outside above the roof line on a metal roof on a $1 million property. I can get them, but I also am going to do a couple $1,000s of masonry damage. And while you're working off a lift, breaking brick out, if you drop brick down that metal roof, now you've got damage to their roof. So I told her, I said, you're really not a candidate for a cutout. She said, I want to save the bees. I said, well, you can save the bees, you know, $5,000, I'll save the bees. And she's like, I don't know if I want to save them that bad.
Yeah. Although some of those waterfront homes, those people, $5,000 doesn't seem like a lot of money.
Yeah. Everybody wants to save the bees until it comes down to big money like that. And I told her,
there's the space you're describing in the chimney. Is it like a plenum that's between the liner and the actual masonry, or what were the bees moving into it?
Yeah, they were going in where a frame board had extended through the block or through the brick, and they were building up the backside of the brick on the north side of the chimney, so the sun never hit that side of the chimney. They were actually on brick, and the FLIR picked it up pretty good. They had a contract with a pest control company, and the pest control company was going to take care of it, but I don't know if you can see this at all.
They can, but it's just whited out in the middle.
Yeah, but it's a steep roof. The chimney cuts halfway into the roof, and good hot heat signature in the brick, nothing in the soffit. And so I told her, I said, yeah, this is how much it's going to cost for me to get them. Or you can get your pest control guy. She had a contract. She called me today to let me know the pest control guys are going to take care of it.
So that's my next question. When bees can't be removed and pest control comes in, what are they doing? They just going to kill them and everything stays in the walls? I mean, because that's a huge biomass in there.
And this time of the year, if you're going to do that, I've had one other this year that was that situation. They were behind a chimney again, and the way the house was built, the whole HVAC system was behind the chimney as well, in a crawl space in the attic. And to access the hive, somebody would have had to remove the entire HVAC system, allow me to get in there. So their house would have been without climate control for a week or better. So somebody could take that out. I do my job. Somebody comes back and puts it back. You know, you're just getting into a cost prohibitive situation. And I actually saw them 6 months ago, and I told them, I said, well, here's what you got. The bees are not in a place where it's going to be feasible to remove them, but I suggest you wait until the end of February to do what you got to do, because that way any resources that are in there, they'll probably be eaten up or mostly eaten up when the bees are starting to build up to swarm, and you won't leave, you know, pounds, maybe 100 pounds of honey in your house. It'll be reduced. So, you know, you can't get everything out, but be greatly reduced, and you don't have, you know, 50, 80 pounds of honey running down through your walls and your ceiling and stuff.
Yeah, and what about yeah, because the bees are keeping the stored honey cool and everything too. If they're gone,
Yeah.
it'll just the wax can melt. So do you ever do trap outs? Do you put cones, escape cones and things like that to try to draw them out?
I do, and I don't like doing them because you have to monitor them so much. I just did one this past year on a house that's about 4 miles from me. And the only reason I did it was because it's a friend from church and they're 4 miles from me. Other than that, I don't do trap outs. I don't have time to run back and forth and check them and make sure I've got all the bees blocked out. And then, you set your trap cone, you think you've got them blocked out. You come back a day later, they found their way back in. You're starting from scratch. You block them out again. You come back 2 or 3 days later, they found their way around again, and you're starting from scratch again. So you haven't done anything. If you, especially if you got a house with a little bit of rot on it or gaps, you can fight them for a week before you even have made any headway into the trap out. And usually trap outs are not successful in getting a good healthy colony and getting the queen out and everything. You might get the queen out, but you're not going to have anything. You could buy packaged bees and be in a lot better shape if you're trying to get bees that way.
Well, I was thinking more in terms of, in my mind, using the trap out or the escape cones and things like that. If we can get them to exhaust the resources that they have, because nothing new would be coming in.
Yeah.
And we get the bulk of the foragers and the workers to come out and then they can't get back in. Ultimately, the goal in my head would be that we get them to use up all their stored honey and resources, and they eventually just have to abscond because nothing new is coming in at all.
That's exactly what a trap out is you're running their resources down to where they just can't stand to stay there anymore. So they've got to get out, and they will abscond. They don't always go to your equipment, but they will leave. And it's not just honey, they need water too. The bees are bringing in water. So if you're blocking off all resources, it doesn't take long to get them out. Once you've got them completely blocked out, it doesn't take long for the rest of them to come out. Some people say you do a trap out for 3 or 4 weeks. No, it doesn't take 3 or 4 weeks. It's a week, sometimes 2 weeks at the most.
Yeah. So do you ever use any kind of pheromone to try to push bees out of a space? Have you ever?
I use Fisher's Bee Quick to steer them a little bit, and I'll occasionally use queen bee pheromone.
A QMP?
Well, no, actual queen bees. I put them in, and they got to be mated laying queen bees. But anything that's not doing good, that's going to go away anyway, it's going in a bottle of alcohol.
Okay. And use that as a lure to get some of the workers out of there, or to push them? How are you using that?
So for those of you on podcast, what happened was Randy froze. The lights went out, everything went completely dark, and he lost power. And when everything came back, his wife Elizabeth was right there by his side.
Look who's there. What happened to you?
She did it.
No.
Okay. Annette does not do that to me, but I think it's interesting. She snuck up and froze you because you were like this.
Everything died. My lights, everything died.
The whole house, the power to the whole house killed as soon as I walked in.
As soon as she walked in the door.
He's like, "What did you do?" And I'm like, "Nothing."
That's kind of scary.
I know.
Did the air get really cold, and did some houseplants wilt a little?
I could see my winter hat blowing in the breeze over here. I saw the fur on it start doing this.
Yeah. So, all right.
I had a honey bear here. It crystallized instantly.
Yeah. See, something happened. I don't know. What's today? Is this?
All I did was come to offer supper. That's all I did.
Back on track, because I just have a few more questions, then I'm going to let you go because I don't want to make you miss your dinner or whatever.
I'm good.
So we talked about.
I've always got the
York
snack.
Peppermint patties.
Yeah, I don't want to go without while I'm talking on internet.
Yeah, you got to stay fortified, Randy. It's important.
You got to.
Okay. All right. So are you already in swarm season down there?
Just getting there right now.
So what's your advice to homeowners
Maintenance.
to keep
Maintenance.
bees? Maintenance. So be more specific than that. What should people be looking at this time of year to make sure that bees don't find a home in their soffits and their walls and things?
Look for gaps. Look for gaps around your soffits, especially if you have a fireplace. If you have gaps or cracks around your fireplace, take care of it.
Now, what do you recommend they use to seal the gaps?
I'll be very vague on that because it really depends on how their house is constructed and what if you got masonry, use brick caulk. If you got if it's wood, use wood trim, use something. Don't never use expanding foam. It makes a mess. Doesn't do anything permanent. It's bees can chew through it like it's nothing.
Yeah.
But
do you have any experience with that expanding foam that's designed as a pest protection foam? Have you seen it? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it says safe for honeybees.
Yeah, so it's safe for honeybees to chew it.
Yeah, that chew right through it.
Okay.
The green can.
And the other thing is, when you go into your rip outs and things like that, do you ever use smoke, or you don't like to use smoke? What do you use, if anything?
I like to use smoke, but we're in somebody's house. I don't use smoke unless it's an abandoned structure, or if it's going to be vacant for a long time, because you'll leave their house smelling like a campfire for a good while.
Oh yeah, we get into everything. What's your preferred smoke or fuel?
Pine straw.
Pine straw?
Pine straw is plentiful down here, and I keep a bag of it in my truck. So
yeah,
I'll use anything. I'll use trash. I'll use pine cones, leaves, sticks, whatever.
Pine straw is number one. I don't know if you already knew that or not.
Pine straw is the best, but I do prefer to use a smoker on a cutout. Just makes the job easier. It makes it go faster. I can direct the bees a lot easier. But when we're doing inside, we can't do it. We can't use it.
So now we're getting to the end. Give us a quick rundown on what the bees you keep at home are like. How do you have them set up? How many hives do you keep?
I try to stay under 50. I don't overall, on my yard right now, I've got 17. I had 19 going into winter. I've got 17 coming into spring.
And what do you get from those, if anything?
Just make nukes. I just split them.
Oh, so you're selling off the bees?
Yeah.
So you don't harvest honey or anything like that?
It's rare. Once in a while I pull a few frames, but I'm not in it for honey production. I don't have time for that, and not set up for it.
So when you're selling nucleus colonies, who are your clients? Who are your customers?
Usually new beekeepers, backyard enthusiasts. They want a hive or two. There's me with my 50 or so. My brother's usually got several hundred. My dad's usually around, he's not this year, but he's usually around 60 to 80 colonies.
Your brother has several hundred. He's a full-time commercial beekeeper?
No.
Oh, he's not.
He's an insurance agent.
What? And he's a sideliner beekeeper with several hundred hives.
Yeah, he's usually 200 minimum. I'm not sure what he's at this year, but usually somewhere around there.
Now, another thing, let's give a shout out here. You gave your dad a horizontal hive?
Ricky gave that to him.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, I had nothing to do with it. I was just a facilitator to get it to him.
Oh. Yeah. So you want to tell us how that's going, or how your dad likes it, or?
He loves it. That was his only surviving hive at his house. He's got another yard that still has a few colonies left, but his health is way down, so he hasn't been able to attend his bees lately. And over the winter, that was his only colony that survived, and they did pretty well. They came out of winter looking good. He likes it though. He's having a hard time standing, so I still have to go help him with it, but it's manageable. He can't. Getting to where he can't pick up boxes at all. Even the empty super is tough because he's got neuropathy real bad in his hands. And so
the horizontal hives really are, a godsend for people that can't lift boxes anymore, but still want to stay working with bees.
Yeah, that was an amazing gift. I didn't know I had no idea that Ricky had any intention of doing any of that. And he's up front. He said, "Hey, I don't want a video out of this. I don't want nothing. I just want to do something nice for your dad." And I said, "Well, you know, I got to show it on the video."
Yeah. And so we'll send me the link after we finish the interview. Send me the link to that video. And for those watching now, you can follow that and see the video. Let's also link that website too, so they can see what those horizontal hives look like.
Horizontalbees.com, I think it is.
Yeah, we'll put the link down in the video description, and people can follow that up. Do you have any parting words? Anything that you want to share with people about thinking about beekeeping? Maybe something you learned from rip outs and things like that. What's your advice to people that are about to get into beekeeping, or the novice that's decided there might be some money in doing rip outs? Do you have any cautionary statements or encouraging statements for them?
Yeah, I could go deep on all that, but on beginner beekeepers, I'd say learn how to manage your bees before you're digging deep into managing pests. I meet so many new beekeepers that know way more about mite treatments than they ever know about beekeeping, or than they ever know about bloom cycles or how to manage bee space or anything like that. They don't know any of that, but they know when to fog or anything. They've looked into mite treatments so much that their bees starve, or they run out of space and they swarm, or they abscond because they get honey bound, and hive beetles come in and start wreaking havoc. There's so much more to it than fogging for mites. But that's the big thing that's pushed now. So everybody, it's not, so not without reason. In some places it's necessary, in some places, but learn what the bees need before you start getting into every other kind of pest management.
Yeah, so learn some bee biology and bee husbandry, and don't focus so much on the latest Mite Away quick strips or Formic Pro, or how you're going to deliver oxalic acid and everything else.
Yeah, I'm not anti-treatment at all.
Right.
I've got a couple of bags of Mite Away quick strips in my truck, but I rarely use anything. For all intents and purposes, I'm treatment free.
Well, you're doing so many splits and stuff to make your nucleus colonies, and they're small. They probably don't get an opportunity to be overrun with mites.
Well, they get a lot of brood breaks, but later on in the year, I'm not fooling with them much. But that all comes from seeing what feral colonies are like and what they'll bear, the mite load they'll bear. Because I am doing mite shakes on or sampling bees from almost every cutout I do now.
That's interesting. What kind of numbers are you seeing?
Anywhere from nothing to 3 to 4 per 100.
When you come across a colony in a structure that has no mites, what do you do with those? Are they get a gold star and those are your breeding stock? What are you going to do with them?
I bring them home and put them in a box, and 2 days later I couldn't tell you which box I put them in.
Oh no. You're as bad as Mr. Ed right now.
Yeah.
All right. He doesn't keep any records of anything. All right. Well, I hope people learned something from watching this, Randy, and I really appreciate your time. And I enjoyed hearing about the cutouts and things, but you didn't have any fun stories of irate homeowners, or did you get attacked by any pets, or did you find a rattlesnake in the wall? Or
I've run across a lot of snake skins, and I'm not a snake guy. Snakes freak me out a little bit. So when I drop a ceiling and a snake skin falls out on me, we've got problems. I was under a house one time and a snake skin fell out on my leg, and there was not much space in there, and Pete was standing there helping me.
Yeah.
And literally, I mean, there was this much room between me and that floor, and I came out of there like a shot. He said, "Dude, I've never seen you move that fast in your life."
Yeah, because you're
hey, I didn't know if there was a snake with that skin, so I was out.
Well, there's one around, or it wouldn't have rubbed it off in that little area down there. So that's a crawl space that you were in?
Yeah, this was a crawl space under a portable building.
So you have any other cool stories about some unexpected animal encounter?
We run into squirrels quite often. I've come up to a soffit 20 foot off the ground on an extension ladder and had 2 squirrels shoot out of a hole that's this far from my face.
Yeah.
And run down the ladder that I'm on, or jump past me and land on the ground behind me, and I just about followed them. You know, something shoots out past your face, you don't know what it is, you just about jump off the ladder.
Yeah.
So other than that, we haven't run across any squirrels or I mean any coons or badgers or anything.
No alligator.
No gators.
Man.
Yeah, nothing dangerous like that.
Just man, you don't have any battle scars or okay, I should probably ask what's the maximum stings you've ever taken in a single event?
In a single event, it would have been yellow jackets, about 150. As far as honeybees, I regularly take 60, 70. I don't even know. I've taken somewhere around 100 in a day, and it really doesn't have much of an effect on me anymore.
So you've got a really good immunity there. Now, what I hate about yellow jackets or any wasps is they just act like a sewing machine. They just keep hitting you because they don't lose their stinger.
Yeah, they're bad.
So you say the southern yellow jackets they make the northern yellow jacket look like kittens.
They do.
And so the southern yellow jackets.
When I took that many stings, I didn't know that was a while back, and I didn't know the difference in the venom in honeybees and yellow jackets at that point. And I didn't know my body wouldn't handle it. So 150 stings from yellow jackets, and I was in rough shape. I was shaking all night. I didn't go to sleep until 5 o'clock the next morning. So use your imagination, but your body gets rid of that as much of whatever's in it as it can.
I'd rather not imagine that if that's okay.
Yeah, that's go ahead and use your imagination.
So you were clean, you're cleansed at the end of the night.
Yeah, you're empty.
Okay, so I do have another question. The vacuum that you use one of those special bee vacs, or is it something you've made yourself, or what kind of bee vac are you using?
We have several. I have a couple of homemade vacs, but I use the Everything bee vac the most. The little yellow battery operated bucket vac.
Okay.
It's so easy. It's light. It's easy to handle. It fits anywhere.
Is that something that's being sold as a bee vac?
Yeah, it's on allmybees.com.
All My Bees?
Yeah.
Would you send me the link to that?
Sure will.
And that's your favorite one? It's battery powered.
It's battery powered. I do have my favorite powered vac is from John Nelson, BB Nelson. It's a really nice looking. If I use it, it's because I'm in somebody's house that I'm wanting to impress.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it's a really good one. It's a really pretty vac. It looks like a stereo cabinet or something, but it's
really.
It's not too heavy. And when he sent it to me, I said, I can't use this thing. He said, nah, man, it's the greatest vac. I said, I'm sure it's good, but I'm scared I'll scratch it. It was that pretty. I mean, it was nice.
And what's that one called again?
It's the I don't know. It's John Nelson.
We'll work it out later.
Yeah,
I know that Mr. Ed made his own, right? Using a deep hive box.
I think he uses the Colorado vac.
Oh, he uses the Colorado bee vac.
Yeah, I believe he does.
Okay.
Yeah, same. Yappy and JP both use the Colorado vac. I'm not a big fan. They're heavy, and I've been on jobs with those guys and seen problems with them that.
Hey, that's my favorite. That's my favorite bee vac.
Yeah.
I had two of the boxes, and I have the extra long intake hose.
The hose length is a big deal when you're doing removals. The shorter the hose, the more survivors you're going to have.
I don't know. It has that smooth bore on the inside of the whole thing. Yeah. Keep it as a straight run. Keep that suction down a little bit.
Yeah.
I didn't have I had literally like 4 dead bees.
Oh, that's pretty good. How long is the extra long hose you're talking about?
That's a 30-footer.
Holy smokes.
That's right.
And still only 4 dead bees.
That's what I'm talking about.
Well, that's because you did it. Anybody else would have killed the whole
That's
bucket.
Probably true. It's because I did it.
Anybody
no, but you have that exhaust valve control on it. The intake valves, you control the amount of air that's going through it. Yeah. So if it's sucking really hard, plus I make sure that there's not a bunch of bends. I try to give as much of a straight run as I can. And those are outside, collections off of trees and stuff. So it's not like my lights are putting on a show behind me. It's kind of scary. Okay. Anything else? Anything at all that you want to say?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you how you got into photography.
How did I get into photography?
Yeah, and what camera do you use?
I have a whole arsenal of cameras, so I'm not committed one way. I'm a Nikon Pro. So Nikon Pro Services, that's probably my main full frame camera system. So in the latest one, the flagship of the Nikon is the Z9 mirrorless camera. So that's what I'm using this year. What?
Yeah, I figured you probably had the 9.
And you can't, nobody else can get them yet until September.
No.
So they're out of stock. They came out for the Olympics. But I grew up, my dad was a photographer. And his name is also Frederick Dunn, and it was Frederick's studio in Northwest Missouri. So I grew up around his studio, and that's how I knew I never wanted to be a photographer, because it was hard work. And all that time living in the dark room and back of the retouching days and retouching negatives, retouching prints, painting prints, by the way. Maybe you're not old enough to remember the oils that they used to do on black and white prints to add color.
I'm familiar. I've shot a lot of film over the years. I still shoot film. I got all this stuff I need to send off. And
so you still got a bunch of 35mm film sitting there?
Yeah, I still shoot film.
You do?
Yeah.
Why?
Why? Just because I enjoy it.
Okay.
Back in the early days as an adjuster, I used to buy film by the bags of 100 rolls.
Yeah.
And, but there were 12 exposure rolls, but I used 1 roll per claim.
Okay.
And it was always little automatic camera. I wasn't into processing or anything like that. I'd take them to the Walgreens or whatever.
Okay.
First, nicer film camera.
What is it?
This is a N4004S. I think it was the very first autofocus.
Now, autofocus came out in the 80s.
Yeah.
So what year is that?
This is 80, 88, 89, something like that.
Because I remember Minolta came out with the first autofocus lens, because my dad grabbed one of those.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're going way back, because back then I was using the Canon F1. And for underwater, the Nikonis 5, for people that know about that one, that was the standard 35mm underwater housing. So,
yeah.
So by the way, your photography is really good. Your openings for your videos are often very cinematic. So you can tell you've been a Shutterbug for a while.
So this is my, I use the D500.
The D500, no kidding.
And this is the lens that nobody ever talks about this lens, but it's the 18-140.
Well, that's it for this interview with experts. Randy is very talented, and we continue to talk about photography for another half hour. But that's a topic for another day. I hope you enjoyed learning a little more about Randy, and will visit his channel on YouTube, 628 Dirt Rooster. I'm Frederick Dunn, and I want to thank you for being here today.